Hey, y'all, it's been a long time. I shouldn't have left you. This is Dr. Jason Johnson with my three things. Almost did two, my three things here. So I'm going to do this one quick. Again, as per usual, I actually hadn't planned on doing this. I've got 50,000 other things, but I needed to add this in today very quickly. Those of you who are finding me for just the first time, which is great, I would love for you to like, subscribe, and comment because I actually think there's going to be a lot of commentary on this. And the first minute, I say what my three things are, and then you can see the entire video on my YouTube channel, Dr. Jason Johnson. If you're seeing this on Blue Sky, if you're watching it on Twitter, because I'm always called Twitter because my mom called it Twitter, if you're watching it on Instagram, you will see the full thing then. So I'm going to start with this really quick. I'm going to just give quick thoughts about One Battle After Another, which is this Paul Thomas Anderson film that just came out. And the reason I'm going to talk about this is because I just saw it and I had a whole bunch of friends say to me, Jason, you're going to hate this movie. So, three things. What is this movie actually about? Like, what's it actually really about? And I'm going to tell you because it's not about what I think a lot of people are hearing online. It's about number two. What are the racial politics of this film? Because again, I'm hearing a lot of analysis on it that's totally off or not what I saw. And then three, is it actually the best movie of the year? We'll go into all those things very quickly. So again, three things, Jason Johnson. So I'm just start off quick. Like I said, I have a lot of good friends in the entertainment industry, and they literally put in one of our group chats, they're like, thought this movie was great. Jason's gonna hate it. And people who know my racial, cultural, political politics, what drives what I do and do not watch in the theaters, they know me. And on the surface, when I saw the advertising for this movie, it did not, like, I had to target market, right? But if you haven't seen it, or if you just want a basic description, so basically, and I'm going to use all the actors' names because it's a lot easier than the crazy kind of names that they use in the film. And with long story short, the movie is about sort of black revolutionaries and the white people who love them. It starts off in a situation where you've got Leonardo DiCaprio, a guy named Bob, who's sort of this goofball, who's part of this revolutionary group that's led by Wood Harris, and has Tiana Taylor and Regina Hall as sort of the main characters. And they are sort of takes place in the early 90s because you see them using a lot of payphones initially, and they're going around and they want, free access and they want open borders and they want abortion rights, women's rights, that sort of thing. So that's how this sort of movie starts. They're doing all these sort of, revolutionary acts. And then what ends up happening is they're, sort of Jean Valjean, Sean Penn, is chasing him as the military person responsible for taking down their sort of terrorist organization or the revolutionary organization. And eventually, Tiana Taylor sort of starts this relationship with Leonardo DiCaprio as sort of the goofball of the group. And Sean Penn catches them and he basically pulls Tiana Taylor aside and he's like, hey, look, I caught your organization. I can bring you all in unless you decide to come and have sex with me in a hotel. So she goes and they have a tryst. It's not clear if this is a one-time only or multiple tryst. And then he allows her, I guess, to go back and continue doing revolutionary work. Over time, she's pregnant. She decides that she doesn't necessarily want to raise a family with Leonardo DiCaprio, runs off, does another mission. The mission goes wrong. Everybody gets caught. She flips on the team and everybody ends up either in jail or on the run. And that's like the first 45 or 50 minutes of the film. You jump ahead 15 years. Leo is raising Chase Infinity on his own. They're sort of vaguely on the run. And because Sean Penn's character, Lockjaw is what he's called, he is trying to join this sort of secret white supremacist called the Christmas Friends, this secret white supremacist society. And he basically wants to get rid of any loose ends that might keep him from getting into society. So he's got to hunt down Leo and Chase because he believes Chase might be, something else. By the way, there's going to be tons of spoilers in this. Anyway, so I say this to say the first 45 minutes of this movie are actually really interesting. So that's what this movie is about. Like the first 45 minutes is an interesting story about revolution in a way and what it can look like. Now, number two, what are the racial politics of this film? This is the big thing for me with One Battle After Another. And there's a lot of people out there, Wesley Morris, who I really, really respect his film reviews, and Fantastic Frankie, I really respect her film reviews, and Teray is a personal friend, I respect his film reviews. I've seen a lot of reviewers, especially black reviewers, really dig into this film and see some things there that I'll just tell you require a lot of fanciful thinking, right? You can watch one battle after another and decide that it is a very interesting analysis and presentation of the costs and the loss and the sacrifices that Black women go through when fighting a revolution, and what allyship should and should not look like. You can look at the movie that way. I didn't see that. I didn't see that at all. I think to interpret this film in that way requires giving a lot of credit to Paul Thomas Anderson that, frankly, most of the movies he's written prior to now give me no reason to give him that kind of credit. Paul Thomas Anderson is known for a lot of very interesting, independent, creative kind of movies that don't necessarily make much, but in particular of not having black folk and not having three-dimensional black characters in most of his films, if he has black people at all. So for people to suddenly say, oh, he wrote this deep movie about these nuanced black characters, et cetera, I'm like, I don't know. I guess you can look at it that way if you want to give him a lot of credit. And I've even seen some analysts out there say, well, he's married to Maya Rudolph, who is a biracial black woman, and they've been together and they've got 4 kids. So what? Who you're married to? Look, trust me, partner selection is a political process, but just because he's married to a black woman or woman who identifies as black as biracial, that doesn't mean that he has any more insight into his writing or directing of black women. It doesn't. Like, I'm not going to give anybody that kind of credit one way or another. I think he's still the writer. She's not a co-writer on this thing. So the reason I say that is because you can look at some of this film. You can look at Teyana Taylor's character, who is very sexually liberated. And early on in the mission, she's grabbing Leonardo DiCaprio and she's like, do you like black girls? Do you like black girls? She's kissing him. She's grabbing on him. You know, she's very assertive in what she sort of wants sexually, and he's grabbing her in the butt. And then there's an early mission where she goes into Sean Penn's office, sort of the general who's chasing them, and she pulls a gun on him, and he's like, sweetheart, you can't really do anything to me. And, you know, to assert her power, she tells him basically to get it up. And so the camera focuses on this man getting an erection in front of her, and then she sort of marches him out, and then he becomes sexually obsessed with her, and every other scene of her from then on is basically him staring at her body and then coercing her by threatening the organization to then have sex with him. You could look at that and say that her actions are of a liberated revolutionary woman, and that taking on white male lovers as a black woman is an act of revolution. You could say that. I'm doing to them what they freely were able to do to my people for 400 years, still now, depending on what your circumstances are. You could see it that way. I don't think Paul Thomas Anderson gives us any reason to think that that's how she's operating, because we don't really hear much from Teyana Taylor's character at all. We don't. Everything we learn about her is from other people's interactions with her. Even the camera angles are not from her perspective. She is primarily seen from the perspective of the white men. When she's arguing with Leonardo DiCaprio, it's from his perspective. When she's telling Sean Penn, to give an erection, I mean, he's looking at her. Like, this movie ain't from her perspective. And in fact, one of the biggest weaknesses I see in this movie throughout is that the most interesting characters are the 3 black women. Regina Hall, it's Cleopatra, Chase Infinity, who's the daughter, and Teyana Taylor, who's sort of revolutionary. They're the most interesting characters. And if this entire movie was about these 3 black women and how they deal with revolution and how they deal with sacrifice, with this sort of nemesis being the man, the system, Sean Penn's lockjaw coming after them, that would have been an interesting movie. But instead, it sort of devolves into what a lot of Hollywood likes to do, which is we're going to use black people and black women and queer people as window dressing for a story about a white guy. The entire middle of this film, if you see major criticisms of One Battle After Another, what you're usually going to hear is people say it's like 30 minutes too long. Yeah, it's 40 minutes too long, because the entire middle of the film is this sort of bumbling adventure with Benicio del Toro and Leonardo DiCaprio that was pretty worthless. And then you have sort of an interesting conclusion action sort of scene at the end. But like, it's almost like Paul Thomas Anderson's like, wait a minute, I haven't spent enough time with the white guy. The one who's going to get the Oscar nomination for this. and then all the black women are sort of shunted to the side. And no, I don't think this movie is particularly progressive. I don't think this movie makes any great stands or moves for black people. I admit from my particular perspective, hey, I am a straight black male making this assessment, so I'm not saying other people are wrong. I'm saying to credit Paul Thomas Anderson with writing this nuanced film, you got to give him, you have to say he's writing from a perspective that he's never given us any reason to believe he's writing from. Because what I saw is a movie where it was like Django. As much as you may enjoy Django, Django is Quentin Tarantino. It's a white man wrestling with this core question of why didn't black people fight back more? That's really what Django is talking about. It's a white man wrestling with that question, and not really from the perspective. He doesn't get into the perspective of black people. Django doesn't have much agency in a lot of ways. Django is being led throughout most of the film. He just gets violent revenge at the end. And the same thing with this one. We don't hear much from Regina Hall. We don't hear much from Chase Infinity. We don't hear much from Teyana Taylor until the end. So he didn't really go into the minds of these black women who are sacrificing everything for what they believe in. He stays with the bumbling, mostly incompetent, sexually obsessed white men. And there's an interpretation of this film that it's really white guys kind of navigating what they want about their lust with black women and inability to sort of have things both ways. And I can tell you, because I've said this about a lot of different kinds of movies that I've watched, I find the sort of introduction of interracial relationships, especially with white men and women of color, to usually be very, very one-sided. We hear a lot about why Leo wants to do what he wants to do and why he lives his sort of life, but we don't really hear anything from Teyana Taylor. And that relationship is really important to the movie. So to not hear anything from her, even though I understand, and it's very clear that she has some sort of motivation, I think the movie is missing a lot. And I think I would have preferred way more attention paid to her because there was a story there. But that's not the story that we were told, and that's not the story that was shared in this particular film. And I think that Chase Infinity did an excellent job. I think Teyana Taylor did an excellent job with what she was given. I think Regina Hall did an excellent job with what she was given. I also found it interesting and problematic that in this entire revolutionary group, that while you had a black man, Wood Harris, leading it, it's mostly black men that you see dying in this film. The mission that goes wrong is because they shoot a black security guard. While there are members of all kinds who get killed, it's one of the black men who get killed first, and goes to that horror movie trope of let's kill off the black people first. And so again, if you want to look at this film and say Paul Thomas Anderson wrote this wonderful three-dimensional nuanced depiction of black women, you can do that. It's not what I saw. It's not what I got out of this film at all. What I saw was a white man wrestling with his understanding of why black women may make these decisions, but never really from the perspective of the black women that the story is ostensibly about. And then it just devolves into how white men process it and end up at the end of the day really not changing or learning much, because Leo's character really doesn't change or learn much by the end of the film. Last thing I'll say is this, number 3. Is this like the movie of the year? Because everything's showing up on my Instagram. Is this a movie? Oh, heck no. No. Is it going to get a bunch of awards? Of course it will, because of the content. Because a lot of people are going to give it this credibility. They're going to give it this nuance that it doesn't have. And I'll say this because it's very interesting. People said, oh, is it as good as Sinners? Look, I actually really enjoyed Sinners. I don't know if Sinners is the movie of the year either. The best movie I've seen this year is called Escape, and it actually came out in 2024. I just saw it on a plane, and it's a film about a Korean soldier who escapes North Korea and runs to the South. That's probably the best film I've seen this year. But what I'll tell you is this. Talk about something being the greatest film of the year. One of the things that a lot of people captured in a lot of conversations we had about Sinners was the sort of relationship that Stack had with Wumi Masaka. And a lot of people were saying, like, how great it was to see a movie where a dark-skinned, plus-size black woman was the object of not just affection, but lust, right? Like, this scene was hot. Everybody in this theater was Stack was with her, whatever. And not only did Coogler not have to beat us over the head with that, but he was just taken for a fact. First off, she's a beautiful actress, like, but it was like, yeah, you didn't have to read into that. That woman was as lusted after as Haley Stanfield. And it's the same man. So it's telling you something like this beautiful man, everyone agrees that Michael B. Jordan is beautiful. This beautiful man can very much be just as passionate about this racially ambiguous, possibly white passing woman as he can about a plus size dark skinned black woman. And you didn't have to read into that. And if you had any doubt that that's the issue or that he could write that sort of thing, remember Ryan Coogler is the one who's written and been involved with Black Panther films, which always feature almost like these matriarchal societies where the men may not be secondary, but the women mostly run things. You don't have that with Paul Thomas Anderson. There's no reason to give him that kind of credit. And you don't have scenes like what you had in Sinners, where it's like, oh, we're making it very clear how these black women are three-dimensional. Wunmi Mosaku was like the smartest person in the film. She's the only person who knew about the vampires. You don't have that in this film. So is it going to get an award for Best Film of the Year? I'm sure it will. It shouldn't. But please tell me what you think. Please tell me what you thought about One Battle After Another, because I told people at the end, I didn't hate the movie. I didn't hate it. People told me you're going to hate it. I didn't hate the movie. I thought it was interesting, but I don't think it was that great. And I think it's another sort of quintessential example, just like Crash. A lot of these movies, when they deal with race, you get a whole bunch of people who are so excited about it. And they're like, oh my gosh, it's breaking all these grounds. But really, it isn't. It's the same old stories that most white Hollywood actors and producers have been writing for years. But because they actually throw some brown people into it who seem to be secondary in their own story, everyone is so desperate, certainly the black community is so desperate for any depiction of ourselves on screen that they're willing to give the writers and directors credit they don't deserve. Shout out to Regina Hall and Tiana Taylor and to Chase Infinity, because I think they were fantastic in this movie. And frankly, if the entire movie had been about them and everybody else had been pushed to the side, I think it would have been a much better film. Later, it's Jason Johnson, Three Things.